Hogstye.
Hey everybody, it is Alex and Steve here on the Hogstye. It's Super Bowl week. We are, 3 days from the Super Bowl when people are listening to this? If they're listening on Thursday?
Yeah, 3 days.
Yep. Awesome. Been a heck of a season. Amazing that everything went as smoothly as it did. But that's not what you're here to listen to. You're here to listen to us talk about the Washington football team. And we promised you an interview, and it got pushed back a few days. It got pushed back because the person we're talking to is a very important person with the team. Julie Donaldson was willing to give us a couple minutes of her time. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that interview up here for you now. We recorded this a few days earlier, but I hope you all enjoy. I have not been this excited for a guest in a long time. This is a great guest we got, Steve. Julie Donaldson is going to be our guest now on the Hogstye. She was hired by the team in July of 2020, so we're getting to that one-year anniversary. She's the Senior Vice President of Media for the team. She was a reporter for NBC Sports for about 10 years, covered the Olympics and a bunch of other big events for them. She hosts about 1 million TV shows. She's on the radio calls for the games now. Julie, one of the hardest working people in DC, welcome to the Hogstye, and thank you for taking some time out with us.
Thank you. Yes, probably hosting 1 million shows is probably about right. Basically, the Washington football team, they keep me very busy, but it has been a most rewarding 6 months. The season went really well, and it was great to finish having won the division, and now it just sets everything up for next year. So the expectations are high, and I'm looking forward to the off season, although I'm not sure when it starts.
It never stops. We've been doing our little podcast for 5 years, and we've realized it never stops. So I want to talk to you about the 1 million shows right up front, because you came in and clearly was like a change in how the team took their content production. A lot of new media, as I like to call it. Steve says I need to explain that. So I mean social media, web shows, the social presence on Twitter and other media platforms just increased for you and Jason and Ron, and everybody was actually interacting with fans on in that way. Can you take us through what the team's goals were when you guys made that decision? How did it come about?
The biggest thing that, having been in this market for the last 10 years or more covering the team, is I had a pretty good feel for the fan base and understood their frustrations, understood how they got their hopes up pretty high. With new ads, with new seasons, only to, have times to be disappointed. And they wanted an outlet for that. And the biggest thing, and also because of COVID too, you couldn't feel as connected with the team. We couldn't have the events that normally they would have held along those lines. So I think it was kind of twofold. The biggest thing is we really wanted to make sure that we connected the fan base with the players in a way that they had never been able to have that opportunity before. So we really kind of did have like this unprecedented access that we really tried to maximize, because we are there with the players. So how can we show that and bring that to you at home in a way that you hadn't had before? And also the other part of that, like a big thing on social media is, I wanted the fans to know, like in this job, as I took on, the media, that, I hear you, I see you, I'm listening, we're listening. The franchise is listening, Jason's listening, Coach Rivera is listening. And that's why we take a very conscious effort to make sure we let you know that and we interact. And, it's fun, especially because the season did go in the direction that it did. But, we understand, too, that, this is something that the franchise and the games and game day and all that stuff, it means a lot to the fan base on many levels for many reasons. And we just really want to acknowledge that. And let you know that, your voices are heard. And if there's things that you want, we're going to work on making sure we give that to you.
Well, winning cures all ills, but it strikes me as this is a major step towards rebuilding a fan base that has, frankly, taken a nosedive, as you well know, in recent years. Certainly based on our numbers. But I'd like to talk to you about the game day broadcast booth, because I think being a play-by-play person and in the booth is something that a lot of fans would love to do, and a lot of them think they can do it, but probably nobody can. So but I don't think you've ever done that before, at least to my knowledge. What kind of transition was it for you to jump into the play-by-play game day booth role?
Well, no, I mean, I've never been at the booth for that, and I understood that. Yeah, there's 32 of those, at least for radio, that are doing it around the NFL, and so it's a very coveted position. It's one too that most get and they hold for a very long time. The big thing too for myself though is I wanted to make sure that the fans had the right experience, that they heard the game in the right way, the best way to present it to them. So I brought in Bram Weinstein and I have him actually doing, like the logistics of that to play. And I brought in D'Angelo Hall, who spent 10 years playing for the franchise, had a great career to kind of break it all down. And then, where I come in is, I have the access to the coaches, to the players, to understanding, watching practice, what they want to do, what they want to accomplish, what they kind of want to run. What's going into the mindset of, some of the guys going into the game or coming off of the last week's game. So I hope to bring that kind of color into it as well. It's been interesting. We're a little bit of uncertain what a 3-man booth was going to look like going in or how it was going to work. It's not a novel concept or idea, but it hadn't, none of us had done this before. So, there were some growing pains along the way, but I do feel that we got into a pretty good chemistry with each other and we started having a lot of fun. But yes, you're right too, winning cures a lot of that. And we had to wait sometimes through some very painstaking games before we could get to the W's, but it was cool. I really enjoyed it more than I ever thought that I would, and I'm really looking forward to getting back to it again next year.
Was it different having no fans in the stadium?
Yeah, it's weird. There's nothing better than game day of pulling into the lot, seeing people tailgate, like feeling the energy, seeing people walk around cheering, chanting during the game, going with the highs and the lows. You feel that energy from them. And to not have that there, it was definitely unusual. And they pump in the noise. And that was kind of like took a little bit of getting used to. It's like, okay, this is really loud, but there's nobody here. And then, for an injury, they cut the noise off. And it's just like, it's a stark comparison, almost like jolts you. You're like, wait, what just happened? Because it was either all or nothing.
Yeah.
And when the stadium in FedEx Field is filled with fans, you have the natural movement with all of that. So it was weird. I know the players missed it. I know the coaches missed it. But I will say this, once you kind of get into the game, you just get locked in and you really get in that zone and you're just focused in on, the plays. But you kind of miss like that, especially after big plays. You miss the roars, you miss the boos, you miss the cheers, you miss the chants, you miss the life. And so hopefully next year we can have everybody back.
Mm-hmm. Julie, one of the reasons you're here and Jason's here now is to kind of implement this big culture change. And I had a chance to speak with Jason Wright about that. He did like a little thing with all podcasters and stuff like that. And it was very cool of him. And you doing this show, it shows a change in the culture. But how do you guys keep this going, keep going up that mountain in year 2?
Well, we're hopefully have laid a good foundation and continue to lay that.
You have.
And we build on it. When we first came in, Jason and I were doing this event yesterday, I believe, and we were kind of like joking that however long we've been on it, I've been here for a good month and a half, maybe longer than Jason. Then we brought in our CFO and he's like, man, I've been here for like 3 months, but in dog years, it feels like you're going on almost like 6 or 7. And it's kind of baptism by fire. It's like go in and hear. Jason and I and everybody that is brought in, we're quick to work. We're quick to say, okay, here's a problem. Let's fix it. This is what we need to do. This is the right direction to go. So we have been working, and I'll tell you this, everybody's been working literally around the clock to try and get things right for those that work for the franchise, for those that cheer for the franchise, for those that play for the franchise. We want to just get it right and make it a great experience all around and build it to what it should be. Which is a top-notch organization. The same thing with winning on the field, left and right. Being that team that's supposed to be there and expected to be in the postseason every year. We want the front office to reflect that as well. So I feel like we've laid a good foundation, and part of that too is, connecting with who our fans are and getting to know them. So that's why it's important to Jason and to myself and to others to do these things, to kind of say, okay, we want to meet you, we want to network with you and get to know those that cheer for us, and what can we do to make it a better experience.
Well, and we can tell you from at least our perspective, the team's done a great job, and we've seen a noticeable difference in how the team interacts with the fans and just in general. We know we're coming up in the end of our time. We don't want to abuse the time we have. One last thing here. do we have anything to say about fans at training camp next season? Has that decision been made, or this off season rather, in July? Are they going to be there? If not, is there going to be a way for people to see what's going on, online or otherwise?
Gosh, I don't even know. I have not been able, in the off season that we have had so far, I have not been able to get to that point. We're in strategy meetings for, our fiscal year 22, for what the shows are going to look like next year, who we're going to work with. We were even just having conversations today, like, will there be a preseason? And I just don't know that we have the answers to all that yet. So to tell you too, I don't know. I'm sure those conversations will be had going forward. And I'll tell you this, as soon as it's safe to have fans there, we want fans there for whatever it is. We want to be back in the community. We want our fans to be around us. We want to interact. We want you to know our players, and the players want that support. And they deserve that support. It was a huge sacrifice for them to have their families have to be locked down this year and not be able to, go out and live life as normal as it has been for everyone. So the second we can say, everybody come on back, we will.
Julie, you guys have knocked it out of the park this first year. I'm kind of curious. I mean, you said you're having some strategy meetings. What are you guys is there anything you guys are hoping to do next year? Maybe you haven't figured that all out yet, but what's next year going to bring? And then do you guys have like a 3-year plan of like, this is your vision of where all the broadcasts and stuff are in 2-3 years?
Yeah, we're working on that. We're working really hard on that. And I definitely have a vision in my head of what I want to do and where I want to take, the shows that we are doing. And, I have some great coworkers that we're Marcus Stevenson's working really hard with us to build this content studio. He's like a mastermind at things. And, so we do have an idea of where we want to go. Can't quite share that. But I will say for next season, we're going to make sure that you still get the content that you loved, that you can consumed. And hopefully we can just make it better. This year we threw a lot out there, and we want to be able to sit back and say, okay, what did you respond to? What did you like? Mm-hmm. What did we think you want more of? What did you decide you want to interact with? So we can give you that content, because that's what it boils down to at the end of the day. We're not creating just to create. We're creating so you can consume it, so you want it, so it's something that you enjoy. And that that goes from the legacy of acknowledging and recognizing the greats that played here, to trying to get the younger generation with some of the stuff that we're doing on the lab, like what's the new gaming,
right?
To getting to know like the players and their personal lives outside of the field, as well as making sure we give you everything on the X's and the O's on the field. So there's a lot of stuff we have going on. We just have to figure out, what did you like, and how can we make sure we keep that going and we do it even better.
Julie, thank you very much for taking your time out of your Friday night here to do this with us. We know that we had to reschedule a few times because you're just so busy, and it really is great of you to give us, even just a few minutes of time. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a good weekend, and I hope you enjoy the Super Bowl since that's coming up.
Great, appreciate it, guys.
Steve, it was really nice that Julie gave us. She promised us 10, and I think she gave us 13 minutes of her time, which was very nice of her.
And it was because of her talking too. It wasn't even us asking too many questions. No. So she was really generous.
No, she was very generous. And like I said, we were supposed to get that last week, and it got pushed back because the day she agreed to do it, the team hired Marty Herney and Martin Mayhew, and so that kind of took precedence over everything else she had on her schedule.
Well, yeah, it was just very nice because we did reschedule. We actually, what you didn't know, Alex, we talked about many dates.
Yeah, I know.
For this, and they were, they were very generous. They didn't have to talk to us, at all. But it was very generous of her to do. So we hope you enjoyed that and got a lot out of it. It was certainly good to talk to her and hear her perspective on things.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest. Her predecessor probably would have never agreed to do a show like ours.
No. Larry Michael would have just possibly fondled our wives and girlfriends.
Well, I wouldn't have gone that far. Frank?
Did I just get us in trouble with the team?
Yeah, don't get us in trouble.
Dang it.
Yeah.
After we just had a good thing and I just blew it.
Usually I do that. That's not your MO.
It slips out.
Yeah, I know. I get it. Well, like I said, she had to push us back because of Marty and Martin. And coincidentally today, the day we're recording this, they had their introductory press conference where they talked to the media. It was them and Coach Rivera, and it was about an hour, that whole thing, that the Q&A?
Yeah, I think it was 56 minutes.
Yeah. So good long time. I want to get your take on kind of just the overall what you heard, but I want to give my 2 cents first. They seem very cool and calm. I like how these two are already working together, from what I could gather, and how I mean, obviously Rivera is very familiar with both of them, so like there's going to be a good relationship between the three in trying to build this team. And I think a lot of fans, from what I saw on social media, they seem to be happy that we have adults in the room. At the same time, it's the same fans who are like mad that they're not going to go all in on a big trade for a quarterback now, it sounds like. So it gives and takes.
My take, is that first of all, there were a lot of kumbaya moments,
Sure.
In there where it was in mutual backslapping and all that stuff. But if you really did get, I guess the overall sense I got is that it's going to be much more of a collaborative effort than maybe it appeared based on titles. Because titles would suggest that the duties are very bifurcated. Wherein Mayhew is the general manager; he's going to do the contracts and the NFL stuff, and then you have Marty Herney as essentially running the college and pro scouting rooms, as the senior vice president of personnel. Well, Mayhew and Herney both talked about player evaluation, and more importantly, they talked about sitting down between the three of them, meaning also Ron Rivera, and coming to decisions. So I think it's probably, in practical effect, more like Ron just hired 2 GMs.
Yeah, and it definitely seems that way, and I think there was I don't remember the exact quote now, but it seems like there was a moment where Rivera went to Dan Snyder and said, "It's down to these 2 guys. I think we really like them both." And Snyder's like, "Just hire both of them. I don't."
Yeah, right. And they had to give one of them. You couldn't have general manager 1 and 2, so somebody had to get get the title. But I really got the sense that it's a much more of a collaborative effort between the two of them than perhaps we originally thought.
Yeah.
Now on the quarterback stuff, I think what we can take from this is that they will try to go. We're talking about realistically Deshaun Watson and Dak Prescott here, okay? I think what you can take from this is that they are going to consider a trade for Watson. They will consider a trade for Dak, and they probably will make an offer, but they are not going to go overboard for an offer.
Right.
That's what I took of it. They're going to try. They already offered a first and a third for Stafford, right? Went in the first and a third.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, they offered a first and
so
third.
they're going to they'll at least go that far for Deshaun, but they're not going to go crazy overboard. That's what I took from that. So I think Deshaun isn't off the table, but if they have to get in a bidding war, they're probably not gonna do that.
I got the sense that from what they said and what Ron said, they don't love the idea of trading away future picks. When you hear the words "we're not mortgaging the future" 20 times in a press conference,
even though they offered picks, but they were this year's picks.
Right. So that's a big thing. There's a big difference between I'll give you my first and whatever else this year versus 4 first-rounders, which you can't even do that, but that's what people keep yelling about, And it sounds like they really like the guys on their roster, and Ron probably doesn't want to part with any of his star players.
Well, I don't know about that. I did get this. He expressly said, somebody asked him, one of the reporters that was on the call did ask him, are there any players off limits in a trade? And he sort of declined to answer that and said, hey, it wouldn't be fair to our players and this and that.
That's true.
So I took the opposite as you did from that, I guess, Alex. I took it to mean they probably would be willing to give up some players. He just didn't want to insult anybody by throwing names out.
Sure.
So I could you see like them offering a first and a third and pick your name, pick your player, whoever, for Deshaun? Yeah, I think they'll probably try to do that.
Yeah, but they're not going nuts like,
They're not going to go nuts, and so it would take to play that out is Deshaun would have to want to come to Washington, which doesn't seem likely anyway. So, It's certainly, I think, more of a long shot now. He gave no indication that they were going to go crazy to try to make a trade like that.
Yeah. And like, because we know that the Texans are looking for multiple draft picks, I could even see it being our first, our second, a third, and a player, or, even maybe 4 picks and a player, something like that.
I'm not too upset about giving future picks as Ron is. I mean, I would definitely do it. I wrote a controversial column.
Yeah, I remember
on Monday about it, and I would go all out personally.
Sure.
That's just me. I think it's that important to get a quarterback, and I'd worry about the rest of it later. So that's me, and I published that on Monday expressly to get people talking. It looks like it did because we had like 1,200 comments to that column.
Yeah. There was a lot of talk about it. A lot of people seem to react to it online, on Twitter and stuff as well.
Good and bad. I'm both an idiot and I'm very intelligent.
Mostly good, honestly. But Twitter seems to be the land of everyone wants to make a trade these days.
Oh, really?
Twitter's.
I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to. I know
you love
Twitter
not being
anymore.
on social media anymore.
Oh man.
Yeah. But
it's just the greatest thing.
The thing about getting back to Marty Herney and Martin Mayhew, and Ron and what they said, it does seem like they are trying to at least publicly present themselves as, we'll be patient with trying to figure out the quarterback thing if we have to.
I'm not buying that for a second. By the way,
I'm saying that's what they're putting out there publicly.
Yeah, I agree, but I just don't believe.
Sure,
it. I don't believe in period.
Sure. But I will say this: Marty Herney in the past has always said that he prefers to draft and develop quarterbacks. Like that's the way he thinks you have success, is going through the draft and not making trades. So
yeah, but truthfully though, how often have you had 2 legitimate, serious top 10 franchise quarterbacks, or even one possibly on the market?
Oh yeah,
I don't know if he's had the opportunity to do, because would I want to bring in like Peyton Manning when he was old, like when he went to the Broncos? Personally, I wouldn't want to. I don't think Herney would either. Like Joe Montana went to the 49ers at the bitter end of his career in the 80s.
He went from the Niners to the Chiefs.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I wouldn't want to do that, but I think bringing in a 25-year-old who's at the top of his game is another matter entirely.
I totally understand.
I don't know if Marty's contemplated that.
I mean,
scenario.
I think I would be shocked if they aren't contemplating it.
Of course they are. I mean, right.
These guys have been literally. Marty's been doing this since I was a baby. Like I was 6 when he started working in the NFL. So and before that he was a beat writer. So I think he knows what to think about. But I don't know. Like it just seems like they're trying to present this kind of calm, and as a negotiating tactic, you have to come off that way. I mean, you know this. You've been in these big negotiation situations before. Never show that you actually want to buy something. Say everything's crap, and then you might get a deal.
Well, like I brought up an analogy on today's IJB, about paying someone to date your wife. Mm-hmm. And so I'd like to have another similar analogy here for this situation, which is if you really, really want to date somebody, male or female, pick your gender, it's not the point. If you come off as really desperate and needy, it's not going to go well. Right. If you act like you just can't live without this person unless he or she goes to McDonald's with you for a date, it's not going to work.
Right.
And so this is the same thing when you're talking about quarterbacks. They cannot appear desperate, because if they're desperate, then the Cowboys and the Houston Texans will do everything to take advantage of you, and it just isn't going to go well. So I think they had to, even if they really are desperate for one of those two, they had no way were they ever going to say that. Particularly Ron, who always is calm.
Right.
And now that I've seen Marty Herney talk, I think he's always calm too.
Mayhew
he
as
didn't
well.
Raise him. Yeah, right. Mayhew too. So
yeah. And I've always a saying I've always had is, if you panic, you will make a mistake. And, I think that's also how they're playing it. Like, they're not trying to panic so that they don't overbid,
But I just can't, but the fact is, you don't be fooled, because this team is not going to count on Kyle Allen, who's still rehabbing, because in the presser, Rivera said Kyle's still rehabbing, still not over the. I even forget even what his injury even was.
It
but
was a broken. It was a Lisfrac type thing, I think, or a broken leg or something.
Was it? Okay,
Yeah.
I don't even remember, to be honest. So they're not going to count on him and old and now injury prone Alex Smith, and what?
Taylor
Who else?
Heineke,
Nobody
and
else is on the
that's it,
roster, and who's not even on the roster. So they are desperate for. They're probably the most desperate team in the entire NFL for a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean they are.
You know,
There's no question.
They
about
are
that.
desperate. They just don't want to come across as desperate.
Well,
because again, you won't get the date if you're too needy.
I will
And
say
that's
the only
what
other team
applies
who's
here.
actually more desperate. No one talks. Well, some people talk about. The Saints are going to be the most desperate because Drew Brees is done.
They've got. Hey, listen, they've at least have a legitimate quarterback on the roster.
I mean, they have Taysom Hill. That's the only guy who's under, and
Right.
they have to fire half their roster because they're that much over the cap. You know that.
Yeah. The Saints are in dire straits for sure. But point is, throw them in there too. So there are two teams
Desperate.
that are truly, truly desperate. So I mean, Washington pretty much has to move heaven and earth to get a quarterback. They
So
just really don't want to say it.
We might as well just transition into it.
Okay.
Obviously, you mentioned it before. They tried to get Stafford, it seems like. They offered a first and a third for him. Stafford told the Lions he wanted to go to L.A. or bust, it sounds like. So, that first and third wasn't going to get it done. L.A. offered a comical, 2 first-round picks and Jared Goff to get him?
Yeah.
And one of the...
And like a third this year,
and
too.
a third,
And
yeah.
a third this year.
Now, one of the first, everyone says, is because Goff's contract is so bad, the Lions are basically eating a bunch of money. So here's a pick to get rid of, a bad contract, which...
I think there's part of that.
Yeah. Something that people do in baseball and other sports more often, rarely done in football, it seems like.
Well, in baseball, there's money going back and forth.
Right.
Baseball, you can actually, like the Nolan Arenado trade between the Rockies and the Cardinals, the Rockies sent the Cardinals $50 million.
Right, you can still
Cash.
trade cash in baseball. You can't do that in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's, no, at least I'm not aware of it.
No, I actually looked it up because I was bored recently. I was like, can you just trade
okay, so we know for
cash?
sure.
And no, they got rid of that.
Because I've never heard that. Okay, so, but yeah, the part of it is, Goff's contract needed to go.
Yeah.
If the Rams... Now, the other thing about this, you got to remember, there's a personal connection here, okay? So, Matt Stafford's wife is the best friend of Sean McVay's wife.
Right.
So, there is a personal connection between the two. Who they know each other. They're comfortable with each other. So, I think there's part of it. But also, let's just be honest and admit that Washington is not a premier destination in the NFL.
I think we knew that, too.
We're only 1 year removed from being an utter laughingstock.
Right.
And it's going to take time, and it's going to take some years of Ron Rivera building this, and Marty Herney and Martin Mayhew building this team up to be something other than just a total dumpster fire. So, like, the idea that Deshaun Watson this year, for example, would consent to come to Washington, I don't see it, but this is the same man who wants to go to the Jets, who are a bigger dumpster fire. So I don't understand that personally. But it's just not a valued destination. This is not the Lakers.
No. It's not. But since we're now still in the quarterback carousel crazy offseason that we're in, where people seem to think that a lot of QBs are changing teams this year, and you're probably going to see more than a normal season change teams. The newest rumor, and I hate to just put out random rumors, but this is the newest one that's making its way on Twitter, is that the Raiders want to get Deshaun Watson, and there's some hypothetical 3-way trade out there where...
And they've got to get rid of Derek Carr to do it,
They would trade Derek Carr to Washington for 2 first-round picks, which...
No.
And then the Raiders would send all those picks to... Houston, which we would never. First off, I would never trade. Okay. You want 19 for Derek Carr? Maybe I could see that.
No,
I could see it. It's not. It's high, but I could see that. It's a starting quarterback. 30-year-old starting quarterback. Fine, but you're not getting 2 first rounders for Derek Carr.
No. I wouldn't go over like a second rounder for Derek. I had not heard this rumor before this moment.
It's just been out there on social media all day.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so you
No
wouldn't-
wonder. But so I haven't looked at his numbers and all that, but I mean, I don't think Derek Carr is worth even 1 first, much less 2. That's just crazy. Insanity. You know what that is? That's Raiders fans dreaming up nonsense.
Yeah, basically.
That's what it is.
Basically, it is. I mean, first off, why wouldn't they just trade Carr to the to the Texans? Because, you know, if you think he's worth 2 first-round picks, the Texans should, right? I mean,
Texans haven't exactly been smart either.
well,
so.
and maybe they wouldn't want to get a quarterback when they killed his brother.
That's true. They got his brother half dead. Yeah. You know, 76 sacks in 2002.
PTSD from all those hits, man.
That's I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, but so that was Now, I would be fine if Washington worked out a trade for Carr. Not that, obviously, but
for something reasonable,
sure. For something reasonable. Yeah. Like I said.
Although, you know what, though, to be honest, if you're going to bring a guy like that in, I'd rather just roll with Alex Smith and get a decent backup.
I think...
What's the difference?
Okay, so you were wondering about his stats. I think Carr's been a 4,000-yard season guy for the last 3-4 years now. He's been pretty... 20 touchdowns a season, that kind of thing. That's where he is.
But he hadn't won anything.
No.
You know?
I mean...
If somebody had warned me about this rumor, perhaps I could have studied the stats, but...
I can't warn you about everything, Steve. I just was throwing it out there.
That's true. No, but I mean, seriously, I mean, is he 30?
30,
Is that what he is? Okay. I mean, is he that much of an upgrade over Alex Smith? Probably some. But,
over what Alex Smith was towards the end of his last season? Yes. I mean, Alex was pretty rough last season towards the end.
It was mainly the interceptions that brought all his numbers down.
Inability to move now because he had an injury.
Yeah, I mean, presumably he's healthy, but yeah, I mean, they need, if they're going to keep Alex and roll with him as a starter, they need a serious backup.
Yeah,
like a starting quality backup. They can't afford to have Carr and Smith. I don't know what Carr's contract status is, but he's on. Yeah, he's on at least an average starting quarterback contract, so they can't have both.
No.
So all of these are predicated on Alex Smith goes away, one way or the other. Which is, can you really see Washington cutting him after the man almost died for the team? I don't know. It's tough
so
pill to
hard
swallow.
And they were talking about, to go back to that press conference, they were talking about that. Like, they have to wait for Alex Smith to say what he wants to do, and I think they do. I know it's a cold business at sometimes. You kind of have to do that with Smith. I mean, that reputation he has now as the comeback player of the year and just what he's kind of done from a leadership perspective for this team, you owe him a courtesy, you know?
And I just don't think they're going to just callously toss him to the curb. And the other thing is, what would that tell the players?
Exactly.
You know, that you value players so little that this man who almost lost his leg and at one point was in fear of his life and is the only quarterback in like 182 seasons in Washington to have a serious winning record, you're just going to throw him to the curb. So, yeah, I think that's just not a good move. Now, if he retires, that's one thing.
Absolutely.
You know,
if he retires, you throw him a little party, you know, thank him for his time.
Wouldn't surprise me if Dan Snyder gave him a job application, too.
Oh, I mean, I think we've all kind of speculated that that's going to happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe there could be some under-the-table deal.
Yeah.
You know, you couldn't put that in writing because the Players Association would go crazy, and it's against the rules, but you could sort of have an understanding that, look, we will hire you into the front office in whatever capacity if you retire. We want to take care of you. We value you. Is this what we were willing to do for you?
I mean, for me, it would be, what do you want to do? Do whatever. Tell us what you want, and we will find you a job in that field. You know.
Yeah. But you did bring up a good point because I think it was Ron did say that we need to wait to see what Alex wants to do. All of this quarterback stuff is predicated on that because just the finances. You know this, Alex, but for the benefit of the audience here, you know, Smith has got a $24.4 million cap hit. So if you throw another one onto that, you're talking about $50 million, which is, more than 30% of the salary cap.
It's an insane amount.
So you can't do it. Period.
I mean, I've and I know football isn't a moneyball sport for a lot of people, but I've pointed to that a bunch of times. Even if Smith retires, because remember, you're already also committing $4 million for Haskins' dead cap, so
Yeah.
you have to add that into your quarterback salary. You're going to have to add in the $1 million or so for Kyle Allen, maybe $2 million for Taylor Heineke, based off of
Somebody, whoever it is.
Well, I'm saying if you bring them back, that's what. Yeah.
But even if you don't, whoever else it is going to have the
Right.
same kind of
Right.
contract.
So you're already, even if Smith retires, you're already talking about $20 million committed to the quarterback.
Because I think Smith's dead cap is $10 million.
It's 10.5.
in his own right.
Yeah.
So,
So
there's a lot invested in it. So
you just don't have
you know.
a lot of money unless you are getting a bona fide elite guy. It's not worth it financially to go after somebody this year.
right, and that's kind of why I said, would they really do Carr? I don't think so. Deshaun, yeah, it might be worthwhile. Dak Prescott,
Sure, it looks
yes.
worthwhile, but
Derek Carr, absolutely not.
you are better off, and this has been coming for a couple of years because I think you and I have talked about this in past seasons. At some point, you need to eat it at quarterback just to get rid of some cap space, and it's going to be this year, or if Smith stays on, you're putting it off till next year.
And listen, I mean, from a financial standpoint, it's to Smith's benefit to stay.
And I don't blame
For
him if he
obvious
does.
reasons.
You know,
No, I don't either.
now if he stays, I would tell him, you're probably the backup. You're making a lot of money, but that's
They told him that last year. They'll certainly tell him again if they have another start. Ron Rivera seems to like Kyle Allen.
I think he likes Allen and Heineke a lot. I think they love those guys.
I don't know how much he likes Heineke. I mean, he's never really said too much about him.
They said a couple things about him in this presser. His name came up once or twice.
Yeah, but I mean, the point is, I think Kyle Allen would start it over Smith last year, and he would start over him again, assuming health. Absolutely.
Probably. Yeah. Well, it's gonna. Of course, that's gonna be the talk of the whole season. What they do at quarterback. Draft is probably still. If you're being smart about it, just drafting it and taking your chances with a new guy, a new rookie, and trying to develop somebody is probably the safest thing to do financially.
Depends on who you're talking about.
I'm saying, from a cost-benefit analysis kind of thing.
And by the way, speaking of that, everybody, we will get to our regular draft analysis. We'll go by position group. We have a schedule laid out. It's not going to start till next week, though.
Yeah.
From the way the schedule worked out, we'll start that next week.
It's going to be interesting for us to do that too, since they're not doing a combine this year.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't we? You mentioned the draft, but free agency's first, and we've got our position groups that we're doing through free agency. So why don't we get to that part of the show because we're about halfway through here. And so this week you have a thing coming out about linebackers. So let's talk some linebackers, Steve.
Yeah, I was going to publish this on Monday to get this out before this show came out, but I thought the quarterback column was too good to pass
and
up.
It made sense at the time.
Yeah, so anyway, free agent linebackers. Now, Washington has a problem at linebacker. That's not big news. They've got John Bostic, in the middle position. If you had a better middle linebacker, you maybe would kick Bostic out to strong side, I think. But it is what it is. And they've got Cole Holcomb.
Who's a good weak side.
Is he? Yeah, weak side. What is he, fifth rounder? But beyond that, they really don't have much. You've got Khalil Hudson, the rookie from last year, Jordan Kunacek, maybe. I never know how to pronounce his name. And they've got a practice squatter.
And Hudson is
Kevin,
not even just a weak side guy. He's like that dime safety linebacker. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he was Michigan called it Viper, the Viper position. But that's what so no, he's probably not realistically a full-time starter. Kevin Pierre-Louis is a free agent. Right. Reuben Foster is a free agent, and Foster didn't play a single down for Washington anyway. No. I can't see them bringing back Reuben Foster at all.
No. Why bother?
At least not for anything more than a minimum contract. So there are some names. So what I did here is I ignored everybody who's a 3-4 outside linebacker because those are really just edge rushers, and we're not a 4-3, a 3-4 team, and we have edge rushers. And you covered that last week.
Yeah.
In a little bit anyway. So what I did is I focus on, 3-4 inside linebackers and 4-3 backers. Mm-hmm. So there are some obvious names on the market. Levante David from Tampa, who's playing in the Super Bowl this week. He's the star of Tampa's linebacker group at a minimum. He's making a lot of money.
I mean, he's kind of being replaced by White now as the star of that group, but those two together are very good.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. But he's a big money guy. You know, he's put up big numbers. He's been a first team All-Pro, second team All-Pro twice, Pro Bowler, once. He's put up a ton of tackles. Yep. This is you're looking at 12, 13 million to lure him away from Tampa at a minimum if he would go at all. And the rumor is Tampa wants him back. So that's probably he would fit, I think, well in the weak side role, and maybe you bring Cole over to the strong side. You'd have to figure it out because I view Levante David as more of a weak side backer. But the point is, it's not realistic to think that Washington's going to spend $13 million on a linebacker. Yeah. I don't think.
I mean, a middle linebacker is worth big money, but he's not a middle linebacker.
I think the ghost of Brandon Scherf haunts this salary cap. And I say ghost, he's not dead, obviously, but he's currently not on the roster. So
and he's going to be making bank, yes.
A lot of money. It's it's going to take $18 million, to sign him, probably, realistically speaking. So, yeah. So they just can't, not when the salary cap's going down $20 million plus. I just don't see big money spent on linebackers. So I think that takes Levante David out of it, realistically. But there are a couple other guys. KJ Wright, with Seattle. He's been on the strong side for Seattle. Mm-hmm. He's coming off of a 2-year, $14 million contract. Another guy who's been an integral part. He was a Pro Bowler a few years ago, second-team All-Pro. Mm-hmm. Talented backer. I think he's another one who would fit in well, but he's another guy who's going to want a lot of money to leave Seattle. Yeah. Maybe not as much as David, but still a lot. So would he be good here? Yes, he's only 31. He's got another couple years left. Is Washington going to spend $12 million on him? No.
I would say, though, scheme fit, I feel like Seattle, what they're doing what they've always done on defense is kind of what Washington's been trying to simulate. So I could see it there, that he would be...
Yeah, I see him as a fit. I just don't think from a money perspective. Yeah, I definitely think he's a fit. J.N. Brown is another one, drafted by the Titans. He's only 25 years old, coming off his rookie contract. He's another one, big money. His way, he's coming off an injury, dislocated, fractured elbow. He went to injured reserve with that. He's another guy he was an inside backer in a 3-4. He would probably work in a 4-3 here, but another huge money guy to lure him away. So that's a name, but I just don't think you Redskins or Washington fans should expect that.
Now, how big is Brown? Is he like strong side, or do you think he's middle?
Well, he's from a size perspective, he's only 6'2", 225.
So he'd have to stay middle or weak then with that size.
Probably, realistically. I mean, again, he's playing in a 4-3, which is now, or 3-4, which is a little different. But I think he's talented enough to where he can make it work. He's just he's not that big. And so you put him at strong side where you're kind of dealing with run and you're getting wrapped up in. That's
240, 250 for that.
Yeah. Ideally, at least, yeah. So you'd maybe see him more of, on a weak side, if he's going to be in a 4-3. Right. But again, you're talking a money problem here. Matt Milano with the Buffalo Bills. Now you're getting into a guy who starting to get into a few names who maybe Washington can afford people like this. 6 foot, 223 pounds, 26 years old. He was Buffalo's weak side backer in their 4-3 system. He went out with a pectoral injury halfway through the season, but numbers-wise, didn't put up a ton, but he's another quality starter. I think he can play well in coverage.
Sure.
So, I think he would be a good fit, and again, money-wise, maybe he would work for Washington more than these other three guys. Nicholas Morrow. Now, he might be my favorite name on this. So, undrafted free agent. Out of Greenville University. Honestly, I'm assuming that's in South Carolina, but I don't even know where Greenville is.
Greenville's like Springfield. There's one in like every state. So
Yeah, right. It's like, it's straight out of The Simpsons or something. But, point is, he fought his way onto the roster as a rookie, undrafted free agent. 2020 put up big numbers, 78 tackles, 3 sacks, 1 interception. He was a strong side backer for the Raiders.
Which is what we really
so that
need.
would fit.
So.
Yeah, that would fit well, I think. He did say he wanted to stay with the Raiders. However, the Raiders have a salary cap disaster. They have humongous problems. They're like the Saints. They have huge salary cap problems. So they probably won't be able to afford to bring him back. He only played 2020 he was a restricted free agent, rookie tender, $3.2 million tender. So this is a guy who maybe Washington can afford, who's not going to expect $12 million a year. So I think Morrow might be a good a good target. Yeah. Comments on Morrow?
I don't have any, nothing profound. No.
Let me roll through the rest of these here then. Denzel Perryman with the Chargers, 28 years old, 5'11", 240, so there's your size, a little bit more, probably strong size from a size perspective. He's played inside, he's played in a 3-4 and a 4-3, he's played middle, he's played weak side. He's known more as a middle linebacker.
Whenever I have a short middle linebacker, it of course just jumps to London Fletcher in my head,
Yeah, it does. You automatically think of London Fletcher. His problem is injuries. He's been perennially injured every year. He's never played 16 games in his entire career.
Don't need an injured guy.
Yeah, right. And that's my problem with it too. Okay, so let's throw out Eric Wilson. Right. Eric Wilson here, Vikings. 2017 undrafted free agent from University of Cincinnati. Made the active roster as a rookie. He's put up some big numbers, at times. 62 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 interceptions in 2020. He was a strong side guy. He's 230 pounds, 6'1", a little bit bigger than these other guys. Known as good coverage skills. Another guy on played 2020 on a tender. Minnesota wants him back, from what I understand. But they have another one that not as serious as the other two teams, that they also have salary cap limitations.
Here's the thing. When we're talking about this, I don't think a lot of our fans might realize this. More than half the NFL is over the cap already because of the drop in the salary cap. I think 18 teams was the last I counted. So, it's a lot. And granted, not all of them are the Saints or the Raiders where you're talking 50 to 100 million. Some of them, they're only 10 million over. But you got to make cuts.
Yeah, we just can't emphasize enough how badly the Saints and the Raiders are in trouble.
And the Eagles, too. I think the Eagles are also up there. I think those are the 3 worst.
Now, I didn't do a specific analysis of Wilson's proposed contract like I do sometimes for these people, and I've written columns about it, but I cheated and looked up various salary cap analysts, what they thought, and the going thought on Wilson is $9-10 million a year. That's probably too much, I would think, for Washington. So that's why I put him kind of down the totem pole a little bit, just from a cost perspective. The last guy I want to bring up, B.J. Goodson, 2016 fourth rounder by the Giants out of Clemson. Middle linebacker, 240 pounds, 6'1". He's a solid starter, not viewed as an elite player. I don't know how much of an upgrade he's going to be over John Bostic necessarily, but that's a case where I think you could bring in Goodson on a reasonable price, put him in the middle, move Bostic to strong side, then you have Cole Holcomb on your weak side. That may be an upgrade at a reasonable cost. So that's why I throw him out there. I don't think you're going to see Goodson in the Pro Bowl anytime soon, but he is a full-time starter. He was a full-time starter for Cleveland last year. Started 14 games in a 3-4 middle linebacker. He made an interception against Washington this year. So I think that's a good, solid option at a low cost would be B.J. Goodson. So just at the end of this, Kevin Pierre-Louis, Reuben Foster. As I said up front, Reuben Foster has just been to his credit, he hadn't gotten any more trouble, but it's been injuries, it's been this and that. Yeah. Personally, I would be done with all that if it were me. Kevin Pierre-Louis, it's probably most likely they just bring him back after all is said and done.
I remember after the season, he said how much he wanted to come back and how he he thought that the system was really starting to work at linebacker. to his credit, he played really well when he's out there. But, he's not doing things that are going to garner a lot of attention. He was a true strong side linebacker where most of the time he's just battle ramming his way in there to try and stop a run.
He played some weak side too, though, remember? I mean, those guys kind of flipped around and whatnot. Yeah. Of all these guys, number one, I think my first choice of this list would be Nicholas Morrow. If they could afford to bring him in. So I would probably go Morrow. Wilson may be the most realistic, and then of the free agents, and then you're probably talking, or I'm sorry, good BJ Goodson might be the most realistic, and then KPL.
I mean, I would. So that's my thought. See what KPL wants to come back and just because he knows the system. It's worth bringing a guy like that back. You know, so I would see what that is. I definitely think they need to, it's going to be a spot you got to target in the draft, even if you bring in a big name. So, they just need depth.
Yes.
They really need depth at linebacker.
They need a starter at linebacker.
Well, they need starters and depth.
So they need a lot of help on linebacker.
And this team, nothing against John Bostic, but he's just very average as a middle linebacker.
He's okay. I mean, he's fine. He's not anything great. He's not going to impress you too much. He's not made a ton of mistakes. He's a solid player.
But Ron Rivera needs a stud linebacker.
He's not Ray Lewis,
I think, you look at when Ron Rivera had success in Carolina, he had that one-star linebacker,
Had stud middle line. He had stud linebackers. He had more than one at times.
Same with Jack Del Rio and his coaching stints in Jacksonville. And
Rivera had Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis in his prime. Thomas Davis, by the way, if we didn't say this before, retired.
Yeah.
So congratulations to him on his retirement. He didn't have a good season last year. He was hurt all year,
he was basically just brought in to be like a locker room guy.
Be a mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, congratulations to Thomas Davis on his retirement. Yeah. Certainly that's something that all of us would have wanted. NFL retired would have been a pretty cool behind the comma title for all of us.
Yeah, and he and I are the exact same age, which, lucky bastard that he had that long career in the NFL and retired, man. That's good money.
Yeah. Right. So that's free agent linebackers from my perspective. So I think everybody needs to root for Nicholas Morrow. Be prepared for BJ Goodson. But realistically, get ready to settle for KPL.
And
that's what I
even
think.
though KJ Wright and Levante David are very good big names, I would rather them try and go for guys in their 20s still than guys in their 30s.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, you're going to give them a 5-year deal. Hope not.
Not everyone can be Ray Lewis or London Fletcher or Thomas Davis and play till they're 37, 38 years old.
Yeah, and they just can't afford it. And more importantly, this year, I mean, Washington's got $20-something million in cap space if you account for the rule of 51. And yeah, sure, they could create some space and whatnot, but Brandon Scherff is a big cost. Yeah. And they're not going to let Brandon Scherff walk away. I mean, one thing that Ron emphasized in the presser, Wednesday's presser, was offensive line. He specifically said we need to protect the quarterback. Yeah. That does not mean letting your first team All-Pro walk out the door.
Exactly. And I know they've already started negotiating with him and guys like John Allen on the defensive side.
Well, they are not allowed to negotiate with Scherff until after the season because he played on the franchise tag.
Well, but they've had those discussions. You know that.
Maybe informally, but formally they can't negotiate because of the tag.
But you know as well as I do, they always get around that. Everyone does.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah. So that's free agent linebackers.
Yeah, it's not a great group, and
no.
When you look at the lists, all the best guys now are all these 34 edge rushers that, like you mentioned. When you really look at all those.
Well, those are the big money guys. They're always your big money guys. They're the 3-4 edge rushers.
They're the highlight guys too. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, that is free agent linebackers. I guess we're coming up towards the end of it, Steve, and there's a game going on this weekend that I guess we should talk about.
There is?
I don't know. It's called. They can't talk about it on the radio. They can't call it what it's supposed to be called, so they just keep saying the big game, and no one knows what it is.
They're just worried about those pesky copyright laws.
I know. It's very weird. But yeah, okay. So Chiefs playing the Bucks.
We can say it in the Super Bowl.
Sure, no one cares what we say.
No.
Right.
Well, also, we are analysts, so this is a fair use thing here. We can refer to it because we are doing analysis.
Non-commercial.
We are not selling a product. Correct.
Yeah, so you got Chiefs, Bucks, Super Bowl, Tom Brady, getting what is this, his 50th Super Bowl in a row or something like that?
At least, yeah.
And he's saying he wants to play even longer. He said he was only going to play 2 more
you're
years.
For
now
Tom
he's saying
Brady
5
to win
or something.
Yeah, if you're rooting for Tom Brady to win, you just hate America. You really do. Yeah. I can't imagine anybody but Giselle is rooting for Tom Brady to win another Super Bowl, and she's probably even tired of it herself.
I'm sure she likes living down there in Tampa, versus when they were up in Boston the whole time,
I guess, yeah.
But, yeah, so...
Okay, so this game...
I mean, it's going to be, I'm sure, a very high-scoring game. You got 2 very high-powered offenses, a lot of weapons for both teams. Brady and Mahomes, very different styles of play. Brady kind of the last of the old school, pocket gunslinger types. And Mahomes is this, new modern, he does everything kind of quarterback. He's not just a runner. He's not just a pocket guy. He can do both.
Yeah.
So.
The line in Vegas is 3 or 3.5, depending on where you go. So the odds makers, the odds makers see this very close game. It's very hard to analyze a game that Tom Brady's playing in because you just don't. He's, I called him a douche on IJB because I think he is kind of a douchebag, to be honest. But one thing you can't argue with is his ability to rise up in big games. He's done it time and time and time again. So I have a hard time. Analyzing this game, because the Chiefs are a great team. They realistically should be favored to win because the Bucks defense lacks.
They have a few good players,
specifically lacks.
Yeah, they're not a full defense.
Yeah, they're just and the Chiefs don't have a great defense either. By the way, but the Bucks lack in they're a great run defense. They're not a great pass defense. What does Kansas City do well? Pass, Right. So it's a tough game to analyze. You have to give the edge to the Chiefs, probably just common sense says, but I think this game is a true toss-up. This is 2 experienced teams. They both have been there before. At least Brady has been there before. So you can't say there's a huge edge to one team or the other. I mean, it's a home game for the Bucks, so that's important, I guess. But
a little, not much. But and remember, Bruce
Arians,
Arians,
22,000 people in the stands is the other thing. So it's not a huge raucous Bucks crowd because there's only 22,000 people.
It's like a MAC conference game sized audience.
Something like that,
But I mean, Bruce Arians has also been in a Super Bowl, so at least you got to figure him as a coach. He won't have those butterflies because he's been there before, at least.
No,
and
this is going to be a good game. It's
going to be a very good game. And like you said, it's a toss up because we saw this from Brady this year in the playoffs. He can play bad for the half a game or even the first 3 quarters, and he'll still put it all together in the fourth quarter somehow.
Wasn't he down to the Falcons 20-0 or something at one point in time?
They were down 18 points, I think it was. Yeah.
Okay, and came back from that, and he did that against Peyton Manning in the AFC Championship game once too, if I recall.
He's had a bunch of great comebacks in his career in the playoffs.
You just cannot discount the guy. As much as I just kind of dislike him personally, you cannot discount Tom Brady.
Yeah. I think everyone kind of... you never really hear many people saying how much they love Tom Brady, personality-wise.
He's just kind of a jerk, I just don't...
Yeah. Pretty boy jerk is what he is,
That's exactly right. He's a pretty boy, yeah.
He would be better if he had a nice scar or something,
I mean, if he wasn't 6'5" and worth hundreds of millions of dollars with tons of security around him, he'd be a guy you'd want to beat up.
Yeah.
Except,
he has all those things. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is going to be a tough one to... I mean, I'm sure it'll be a fun game. That's for sure. Like if you like seeing guys, throw the ball around, this is gonna be a game to watch.
I think one factor we're discounting a little bit here. There's none of the media hype around this game. Now, a lot of times it's hard for people to understand the hype unless you've been in the middle of it. I was in the middle of it for one particular Super Bowl, and it is just such a different world. For regular, normal people and sitting in their living room, you kind of see some stuff. I a lot of times think the media hypes themselves up too much for the Super Bowl. It's more important to them than it is to us. Like the media day is just mostly stupid, and
it's a bunch of DJs sitting in a conference room. Yeah.
And they're patting themselves on the back about how great they are because they're at the Super Bowl, basically. But what is important is that none of the chaos is around these teams this year. This is more like a normal game with normal preparation, so there's going to be a lot less jitters for those members of the Bucs who have not been there before. So I think that lends itself a little bit more towards the Bucs side because the Chiefs are ready for it. They were there last year.
Yeah, well, and, I don't think it phases Tom Brady at all. That's...
No, he's got a bunch of guys, who haven't been there.
Right, that's true. But he also had...
Certainly Tom Bradyism will infect everybody, and you lift them up, you would think, yes.
But he does have Gronk with him, who's been there, obviously. He has Antonio Brown there, who's been in... Well, actually, did Antonio Brown play in the Super Bowl? Was he on that Super Bowl team? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
But regardless, he's got a lot of experienced vets there who should... be able to handle this. That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about the hype side of it.
Yeah, because it's a regular practice week for these teams. The Chiefs, I don't think, as we speak on Wednesday night, are even there yet. They're coming later in the week. It's much, much more. It's the only Super Bowl in decades where this is truly basically just a regular game.
You got to go back to the first Super Bowl when they were just like, "Yeah, we're having this game. We don't know what to call it yet."
Right. Let's call it the Super Bowl, and what a dumb name, but that's another. Yeah.
But I mean, things were more casual then. That's my point.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
always like to joke how the halftime show was the dude with the jetpack, and that's still better than most of the halftime shows.
Yeah, it is. Tell you what, let's do this, Alex, if I can propose something to the host. I've got a list of prop bets here. We'll talk about that, but let's do our Super Bowl predictions now,
and then we'll do the
and then get to the fun stuff to close the game. Yeah. So, okay, I'll go first since I put you on the spot. I'm going to say the Chiefs pull out a high-scoring squeaker here just because I think at the end of the day, they're probably the better team. Not to insult or discount what Tom Brady can do, but I'm just going to go with conventional wisdom and say the Chiefs pull out a squeaker like 31-28.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I think Chiefs do pull it out. I'm thinking 38-35, though. I think both teams get in the 30s.
Oh, bigger scoring,
I think it's going to be a full-on shootout. Yeah, so I'm with you. And I hope the Chiefs win. I will honestly say I'm rooting for the Chiefs just because I can't root for Tom Brady.
I can't.
And even though we have a bunch of listeners I know in Florida, can't root for them. Sorry.
No, I can't. Nobody in the right mind, but again, his family root for him to get a, what is it, seventh Super Bowl ring, whatever he's up to. Good God, no. Okay, so the fun part of the Super Bowl for most people for the non-football people, are the prop bets. Yeah, the stupid bets. So there's a whole bunch of them, and we have a list of some of them this year. The big one that's actually not on my list, but the big one here that is what color Gatorade is the coach going to be doused in? Lime, green, yellow,
I always go yellow.
Red, orange.
Yellow,
Yeah, I would go yellow too. But now, this is, by the way, courtesy the Washington Post published this, what I'm about to read. We're not going to go over all of them, but we'll go over some of them. First question, will Eric Church and Jasmine Sullivan sing the national anthem in less than 2 minutes? Now, I'll just say I've never heard the name Jasmine Sullivan before I read this piece of paper, so I don't know anything about her. Eric Church, I've heard of. What do you think, Alex? Under 2 minutes or over 2 minutes?
Because it's supposed to clock in at like a minute 56 or something like that, which is and that's if you're singing normal. I don't know enough about Eric Church, but I because it's a duo, I'm going to say over. So.
Yeah, and I just think a lot of these vocalists try to impress with a bunch of runs and stuff, and so they, and so I tend to think over. for that reason. And Eric Church doesn't strike me as somebody that would do that, but I don't even, if Jasmine Sullivan walked in my living room.
Like I said, a duet also tells me that they'll be belting back and forth.
Yep. Okay. Again, I'm going to skip the least interesting ones here because there's a whole bunch of them here. Will there be a score in the first 5 minutes, 30 seconds of the game?
Yes.
Yes or no? Yeah, I would say yes, too. What team will commit the first accepted penalty?
I mean, who knows? I guess Tampa. I don't know.
I would go Tampa. Yeah, it strike me as less disciplined than the Chiefs.
It'll be
Here's a good one. Over and under. How many total touchdowns will be scored? The over and under is at 6.5.
Oh, well, I mean, given that
total touchdowns.
Total touchdowns. Given that you and I both had like in the 20s, high 20s and 30s, it's going to be over. Yeah.
Yeah, I would think over too. Will The Weeknd be wearing sunglasses when he's first shown during the halftime show?
Okay,
yes
I want to say I don't know that because I have no idea what The Weeknd's aesthetic is. All I know is he's got one damn song and they've played the hell out of it for every commercial break the last month.
The only Weeknd song I've ever heard in my entire life is the one that's played in that commercial.
I don't know if he even has another song, Steve. I think it's literally that one song that's got like the 80s funk thing.
Can I brought this question specifically to allow me to rant on the halftime show briefly. Somebody please tell me why Metallica has not played the halftime show. For the love of God, why isn't Metallica? They are a major stadium touring act, the number one rock band in the world right now.
Look,
why isn't Metallica?
I have nothing against The Weeknd's one song that they play. It's a nice, it's catchy.
It's fine.
It's got a good beat to it. It's that weird thing that people are doing now where everything sounds like it was made in the 70s and 80s again. But is he going to play that one song for 25 minutes? Because that's the only song anyone knows.
Well, presumably there's going to be three or four special guests.
I
would assume.
Yeah, but I'm with you.
I would just want Metallica to get up there and play four songs.
Go back to.
I don't think that's too much.
Go back to get some older guys because they have better hits.
Well, if everybody isn't aware of this, I think it's Dr. Dre. It's either Dr. Dre or Jay-Z. One of the two of them is running the halftime show.
Runs it.
Yes, I think it's. I would guess Jay-Z. I always get the two of them mixed up. Which is the one that's married to Beyonce?
Jay-Z.
That's Jay-Z, right?
Yeah.
It's him. So I don't think it's pretty likely that Jay-Z is going to dial up James Hetfield anytime soon.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah. Okay. So that's just my rant. For the love of God, enough with the hip hop and pop acts. Let's get a rock act in there, for God's sakes. How many receiving yards will Rob Gronkowski have? Over and under 28.5.
Well, hold on. It's 28.5 is the number?
That's over and under 28.5. Yeah.
Over.
I'm going to go under because he actually only had, I think, 21 yards in the AFC Championship game. He didn't have too many yards in that game. So I'm going to go under on that one. Okay. Will Tom Brady finish with at least one rushing yard?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
Not one single yard.
He'll get sacked once or twice, and so,
Yeah, I'm going to go no also. Okay, here's the tiebreaker here. How many total points will be scored in the game? You know what? We already went through that.
Yeah, we already kind of did our total. So
yeah, let's finish on. Let's finish on another good one here then. How many interceptions will be thrown? Over and under 1.5.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm going to say over. If it's both quarterbacks, maybe both of them throw one. That kind of thing.
Yeah, so you go over. I'll go under just to make it interesting because, neither one of these guys throw a lot of interceptions.
No, they don't, but it's also a big
Tommy had an all-time bad game in the AFC Championship game by throwing all the interceptions that he did.
Yeah. Well, but that's what happens in the playoffs. Look at Drew Brees threw, 4 interceptions or something ridiculous?
Yeah, he threw all the interceptions, too.
This is just what happens.
Yeah, so that's a few of the prop bets out there, so have fun with it. And just remember, this is another halftime show where you can go to the bathroom, you can go get some food and sit this one
I got to figure out what I want to eat.
Again.
I haven't even...
I have to figure out what pizza store I'm going to order from.
I figured you're going to do that. I'm actually probably going to be
Papa John's, Domino's, or
I'm probably
Pizza
gonna
Hut.
be,
You know, which one?
Doing something similar because our kitchen's basically disappeared at this point. So,
because for those of you who don't know, Alex fancies himself a chef, and so he a lot of times produces. Like I remember one time you were talking about you spent all day making some special apple bacon or something, and I said, "Hey, I microwave mine for 50 seconds."
Yeah. Well, the last Super Bowl I made like a crab dip, which takes me forever. I do it from scratch. Like I'll usually do something fancy, but
maybe not this year since you literally don't have a kitchen.
No. They don't start demo until Monday, but that means I'm not gonna cook anything Sunday night. So
no.
Yeah.
All right, kids. Well, we're way over time considering we had Julie's interview.
We do have that interview.
Yeah.
That was in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I forgot to.
I brought it up subtly to remind Alex that we need to end
all
this
right,
show.
guys. I hope you enjoyed this little bit extra long show then. And we will see you as the off season begins on the next show. Oh, we might take 10 days off because we usually switch to the weekends when we're recording to this after the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So our plan at this point is to switch to Saturday shows, which would mean there will not be a show next week, but next Monday. Right. If something strange happens, we will do a show. So we will just plan it by
if the team trades for a quarterback, we'll do a show, basically. Yeah.
Something, yeah. And I'm sorry for O.J. Simpson bowed out of the interview, so we got Julie Donaldson instead.
Such a bad joke. So inappropriate.
It's a good joke.
All right, guys. See you after the Super Bowl.